Morning, guys. It's Wednesday morning, about 7 o'clock a.m. And we're going to do a cold start for you this morning. It's not real cold, it's about 35. But quick little thing. Wanted to show a couple toys that I've got sitting on the shelf that maybe I'll break out here at some point. I've got two Ace Scale gas or nitro RC buggies here. That first one with the silver and white is a Kyosho Kanai 3. Basically it's an Inferno, but that's the Kanai 3 edition. And that thing's old. That's about, oh god, probably 7 or 8 years old, and the other one's another year or two older. That's a Mugen MB4 XR. Both of these run on .21 size nitro engines. That one I don't have radio gear for. That one's set up and ready to go. Probably need some new fuel, and I need a new battery for my starter box. Because the battery's junk and I need a new receiver pack. I think that's a 5-cell straight pack for that, because that battery pack's junk. But I like to play with this one. That one's got a motor in it and the other one doesn't. That's got a .21 size, I forget what, oh, it's a WS7 in that right there. That thing scoots. We used to go down to Columbus and race those. And then that's my the very first generation RC10T truck right there. In fact, that was bought before those were even released onto the market. I got a special deal on that. Had to hook up, and that is a turbo Burns right there. So that sucker's old, and you see it's got slicks on it. We used to race those indoor on the concrete, and we had a track for those. And let me tell you what, we used to race those in our fairground community center, where they hold swap meets and stuff. Our hobby shop owner and a couple buddies used to rent the facility inside, and we duct tape 4-inch corrugated drain pipe to the ground. Sorry guys if I keep stumbling here, I'm barely awake. I got my coffee though. And let me tell you what, when one of these gets a radio glitch back in the day and goes haywire, it'll put a dent in an overhead door that looks like somebody ran a go-kart into it. And one of those runs into your ankle, it'll break your ankle, because they downright scoot and they're not light at all. So I'd like to get that one going, but I need some stuff for it for sure. My radio's in that box up there. I got a ton of extra tires. That whole tote's full of stuff. Even though that fuel's old, that O'Donnell fuel seems to keep. I did start that last year, but it's got alcohol in it, so it draws water, and that's not good for those little engines. And then I have a whole toolbox full of goodies there. And then we have my poor T-Max here. This is first generation T-Max, which any of you guys that run these know the motors, no matter how you break them in, those factory motors, you'll end up having to re-piston and sleeve them pretty quick. In fact, mine shit the bed right after I broke it in. And I've been breaking in these things since I was 16 years old, so I know how to do it. So we're going to get a cold start going here. Just a little RC car thing. You know, show some of my toys here before I walk out this morning. Oh. Hit the unlock button instead of the lock button. We'll be doing a little bit better. Oh man. Sinuses are going crazy this morning. We're supposed to get 1 to 3 inches of rain and snow mixed tonight, so yay. We're going to go to the shop and sand some primer here and do an oil change on this truck as it's due. So we'll let the glow plugs do their trick this morning. This truck has not been plugged in. I think it says 38. Yeah. So there you go. Not much else going on. I always say that. I've been getting a lot of comments on the Iwata paint gun that I've been demoing, and I'd like to send a special thanks to Slow SRT, to Matt. He PM'd me with a couple of things last night. We talked back and forth a little bit, so that's cool. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it, bud. And you know, I really respect your guys' opinions and your experience for sure. For any of you that do this day to day, I want to get better at it. I love it so much that I want to get, you know, better at my game here. So, and thanks for all the positive comments on that van. That thing really turned out slick. The blend turned out good. So, we're going to go and we're going to get that Duramax blocked out and decide if I need to prime it a third time. I primed it a second time. That MP4 2K is a real good primer, but I'm shooting it through a smaller tip, through a 1.5, and I have to reduce it a little, so I'm not getting quite the build that I want. And it was aggravating the feather edge a little bit because I sprayed it a little wetter. So we'll see if that laid down. I guide coated it and blocked it yesterday, and I got almost back to my edge primer, so I just started to see it, so the film build was real thin. I did dry block it, and I tell you guys all the time that I hate dry blocking, but the way I had that hood masked up, I don't want to have to redo it just for primer, so, and try and dry up all the water mess, so I did dry block it with some 320, and it came out pretty close, so hopefully that'll be good today. I did get some more of the diesel fuel for the heaters. So you can see that thing's idling up. We're running about 1,000 RPM. It probably won't idle up much more than that because it's not real cold, but I'll let it idle for a minute or two here. And we'll get going to the shop. Got my gauge tree over here. I got my tranny temperature gauge on the bottom. Pyrometer in the middle for exhaust gas temperatures. This truck's got a 5-inch exhaust on it, so if you get it warm, the minute you let your foot out of it, man, it cools right back off. And we got the top one. We got our boost gauge up there. Of course, the truck's idling, so it's not running any boost. One thing I've noticed, my buddy that owned this truck before me, he's got the tranny temp gauge hooked up directly. You know, this is an autometer gauge. It's hooked directly to the side of the trans, so that'll give you an accurate oil temperature reading. I'd like to know where Ford puts their temp gauge for the tranny temp, because this truck's block cold, and it says the tranny temp is almost into the normal range, and it's only been running for 2 minutes. So when it's bitter cold, it'll actually sit on the C on the bottom on the cold. But we're at let's see what our mileage is here, 114, and I think I had it set to change at 112. Maybe it isn't time. I usually go 3,000 to 5,000 miles, and at 112,000, I think it would have been at 3,000. So maybe I got another 1,000. Not sure. Something I want to show you, snow plowing guys. If you have one of these trucks with the parking sensors on the back, with the little sensors in the rear bumper, on the older trucks, this is an 02. When you push that button to override it so it turns them off, you know, that works, but the minute you go from drive to reverse again, it comes back on. So what I did to alleviate that, because that thing will drive you batshit crazy when you're plowing snow, because it gets dried salt and snow will get on the bumper, and it'll set those things off. What I did, we're going to open the glove box here. You can see those wires hanging down. I need to get a different switch because that one's a little too big, but it's what I had. Those wires go to the chime, the speaker for those for that backup alarm, or backup sensor, excuse me. And what I did was I spliced in a switch to the one of the leads on the speaker, and you can actually just turn the speaker off. So it's not like the sensor is turned off, the speaker itself is turned off. So that's kind of an interesting one to get to, because you have to pull that lower passenger floorboard kick panel off and then lay on your back, and you have to move the seat all the way back to get your body up in there to get to it. But I pulled that speaker down and spliced that setup in there so that you don't have to listen to those things beeping and going crazy. That switch will say that it's off anytime the sensors are going off, and because I have the salt spreader on, it's blocking it all the time. So if I turn that switch back on, which I can do for you here real quick. Oh, that's what happens when you lean into the snowplow control. Shut that off here real quick. This video is already 11 minutes of me blabbing, but oh, I gotta lean way over. We'll turn that switch on, and the minute I put this thing in reverse, it's gonna probably start beeping at me. So you can see that switch setup works quite well. So we'll put her in reverse and she won't yak at us. So at any rate, we're gonna get this show on the road here and get to the shop. Got to bed pretty early last night, maybe 10 o'clock. So that was good. It rained a ton. Oh, and then you got the seatbelt dinger. At least on the older trucks, you can just click the release button on the seat belt and it'll shut that thing up. I will put it on here in a second, but the other thing with these Ford trucks, and maybe the cars and vans are the same way, when they get older, seat belts don't like to retract back up into the backrest of the seat. So here we go. We're not going to do a driving video because the audio gets so crappy, and I've already got a long video going here. So 12 minutes is enough. I'll click you guys back on when we get to the shop and get things going on there. So I'll talk to you guys in a bit. All right, guys. Now that you've seen the cold start this morning and all that good stuff, we're going to keep on rolling. While I was waiting for the heat to build up in here so I could shut it off and turn the camera on so you can hear me, I started blocking on this stuff, and you know, we got you can see the black dots all over that. That's our guide coat, and I don't have any 320 for my long block. All I have is 400, and I'm dry sanding this a little bit. The bigger the block, the straighter you're going to get it, as long as the block will fit the panel. So this is, I'd say this is probably a 12-inch, and we can see that that covers that repair pretty good when you're sanding at an angle. I mean, you're always over top of that repair. We got to keep in mind that we got a little body line up the front, and we got the crease here. There's tons of body lines. You know, you got one here, here. This curve here we'll have to get something a little softer for. Same thing with that one. We won't be able to do much firm block sanding on that. But this is basically what we're going to do. This was primed a couple days ago. You saw me do it, and then I hit it again yesterday after dry blocking it. Some of my feather edge spots here were getting aggravated by that primer and starting to get soft. So I figured, well, instead of waiting the 2 hours to block it, I'm going to let it set overnight. And we're still seeing some lighter areas in here. And we're going to see what that looks like with a little bit of sealer over top of it. All the guide coat's gone, but I don't want any more bullseyes, especially as many spots as I have in this hood. I guess one thing I could do is prime the whole hood and block it straight, but I really don't want to fight all those body lines. I mean, there's just too many curves and contours. to make this project more complicated. It's not something I really want to get into, but we'll find out here how this is going to lay down. So I'm going to put you guys on the stand. We've got this Durablock here, and then we have the smaller one. Both of those have 400 on them. They're about the same length. This guy's a little more flexible. Another tool we're going to use is that Motor Guard soft block. And I'm not going to do a bunch more dry sanding on it. Some of these longer spots up on the top, if you look at it here, you put the DA on that, and the DA is almost as wide as that, especially for the smaller spots. So there's no reason you can't block that with the DA. It's got to be careful. You don't want to cut it too thin, but we definitely want it as straight as we can get it. So I'll kind of give you a demo on maybe those two spots over there. They're a little smaller. We'll hit those with the DA. And I know I don't have a dust mask on here. That's why I don't like dry sanding. But you're not going to be able to hear me talk. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that with the DA so that you guys kind of get the gist of that. I think you can see that. We may give you guys a little zoom in action there too. I've got 320 on the DA. I also have 400, but 320 is good enough for sealer to go over. And of course we have a leaky air hose. You know, of course, why not? I just fixed that hose about a month ago. So we'll do the same thing we do when we sand with the block. We're going to sort of try and cross sand that just a little bit. That's knocked it down quite a bit. That piece is kind of worn out, so I'm going to take my block and I'm going to actually hand block some of this. Just to kind of make sure that I got it where I want it. And I'll finish sanding this with probably some maybe 400 or 600 wet. Another thing to do when your paper loads up, take your blowgun and blow it out. It's other reason to be wearing the dust mask because this stuff goes everywhere. And then I just take my blowgun and hang it from my back pocket and hope I don't fall and land on it. Piece of 400 is getting pretty worn out. I may need to change it. I preach it that when your paper seems like it's not cutting anymore, you know, we're going to blow it off, but the main thing is when it stops cutting, change the paper. You're not doing yourself any favors by trying to save money on paper. All you'll end up doing is not cutting it flat. That's one reason 400 is really not my number one choice to start cutting this stuff down on a long block. At least dry, because it loads up real fast. And immediately I can tell a huge difference in the way that's cutting. think we may I'll lower this tripod and set it up on the hood of the truck for you so you can actually see an up close of this. Sorry about the shaky cam. See if we got you guys in the frame here. But we've still got some dark areas where the guide coat's sitting in the lows, like in the middle of this, and just a teeny tiny bit in this. So we're going to block until that's gone. One thing about these hoods, you know, they're not pinned straight from the factory. So that's another argument for priming the entire hood. And if you want to get it straight. But we're going to get it pretty stinking close here. And our guide coat's gone. So even though we got kind of a non-uniform color to our primer, that shouldn't be a problem. That's just different coats that dried at different times. So we'll see, you know, a little edge around here. That's okay. That ring shouldn't be any problem. We're real nice and flat, and we have no black dots left in it. This one's got a few. One thing about the dry sanding, it cuts a lot faster. It's just not my preferred method. I don't like having all the extra dust in the shop because I have to paint in here. So we're going to try not to do a marathon sanding video here, but we're going to do quite a bit for sure. I've been getting a lot of comments that you guys like to see the entire process. And you know, when you edit and just show clips, hey, I did this, I did that. Those are awesome vids, you know, for somebody who has a pretty good grasp on how this goes and how it's supposed to be done, the process. But for other people and the way that they learn, it's easier to see an entire process as it goes. And I'm certainly one of those kind of people, so I figure what's good for the goose is good for the gander here, so. I don't know how well the camera's going to focus. It looks a little grainy, but we can see different colors. Probably not real well, but we got darker, lighter. See a little ring, but again, those are the edges of where those different layers of primer was. This was my first coat. Way out here, let me zoom out a little bit for you. First coat, second coat, third coat. And that's about, that little one's about the size of my repair. So that's the way that that goes. Same thing with this. First coat, second coat, and third coat. I may need to sand that just a tinge more. But another good example would be this one right here. We have first coat, second coat, third coat. So we got 3 rings. It looks like a bullseye, but when I talked about bullseye in the video the other day, Usually that means after you spray your top coat on top of it and it actually maps out the repair. It's also called edge mapping. That's why if you don't get this block flat and you have a big dimple in the middle of it still, that's why we use the guide coat. So that's how that's going to go. We're already at 12 minutes here, so I'm going to do the DA on this one right here and show you guys that some more, how you can actually block a larger area. That's a 6-inch finishing DA. You can use a little more aggressive one for that if you want, but the finer your scratch in your undercoats, the more holdout on your gloss and bodywork that you'll get with the finer scratch. And that doesn't mean super fine grit. That doesn't mean you're going to sand this primer with 1000 grit or 1500 or something like that. That's not the point. The point is the orbit of that sander leaves a smaller swirl, and it actually cuts a little more fine of a scratch into it, so it doesn't give you the deep scratch that a heavier DA will. But most of the sealers will cover up even a heavier DA scratch, as long as you finish in 320 to 600, somewhere in that range. The metallics, you definitely want a slick surface, probably around 600 grit, because if you have any renegade 320 scratches and you're putting a metallic on there, especially a gold or a silver, if you don't put down some inner coat clear first, or if you want to call your first coat your wet bed, put some clear base coat down on top of that. You know, the sealer will hide most of it, but that clear base coat, you know, outside of your repair area, if you had any scratches, will fill those up so that metallic doesn't lay goofy in that scratch, and then you'll see all those weird metallics laying around. So without further ado, let's see if I can get this camera to actually set here while I do this. I really want you guys to see this. This is how I do it. This is how I learned from other guys who are in the field that do this. And you know, you take this knowledge and you put it together with you know, more than one person. Usually you might see one guy do it one way and you think, oh, that's pretty good, and then you see another guy and his way seems faster or easier, so you kind of build your own method to achieve the same result. So we're going to hit this. Dust out of that DA disc. When they load up, they won't cut. And I don't use the most expensive paper, but I don't use cheap paper. This is Norton. Don't get me wrong, I have some lesser expensive paper that'll still do the job, but it doesn't last as long. Okay, notice the way that looks. I still have a few if the camera will pick them up, which I'm not sure. Still a few black specks around in there, and I'll take that farther, even though it'll feel good by your hand. That's why we use the guide coat again. That's to give us a visual aid on whether we've got a low spot or any of that. The high spots will cut off first, so we'll cut it until we're down to the lows, and then stop and make sure we have a nice fuzzy feather edge. That's the kind of edge we want. We're rapidly approaching that being ready to go. So that's going to be it for right now, and I will do a little more in a little bit. I'm going to get some progress made on this because this will probably be a 45-minute to an hour video, and we're going to cut it here. You guys see how this is done, and I'll keep doing them as long as you guys like them and you want to see them. So we'll probably do some wet sanding on this too. So we'll talk to you in a bit. Alright guys, I'm down to my final stages of sanding here. You saw how I did it dry. Now you're going to see how I'm going to finish this one up. All those spot primes are finished. Before I started wet sanding, they were finished with 400 dry, and now we're going 600 wet, which is when you wet sand, you cut a little bit less scratch. So the other reason I'm wet sanding this entire hood is to finish getting any factory peel out of it, and I am going to paint the whole hood, and to get any Renegade guide coat that might have splattered because it's black, and of course the hood is red. And even though we're going to paint the whole thing, I want to try and get it all off. And this is not going to take that long to do. So I'm just kind of going along. I've already done the area up here. This spot is done. I'm working on this area of the side. And I'm not using a real big block, but we're not going for cutting it any flatter at this point. I just want to make sure those feather edges are tight and right. And this is that Motor Guard semi-soft block. Excuse me. The soft block won't cut the scratches as deep, but it also won't take out scratches as fast. I did buzz over this with some 400 on the finishing DA, which is probably equivalent to a 600 grit scratch already when you're using a DA, and especially a finishing DA with a small orbit. You know, you don't have to have that kind of sander, but you know, this is kind of show the guys that are doing it at home just how to do some wet sanding, how I do some wet sanding. The other nice thing I like about the soft block, when you're in an area with a lot of contours on it, it'll ride over them nice. If you hear it pick up some trash, stop and wipe it off, because the trash is probably going to leave a deeper scratch than 600 most likely, if it's making any squeaking. Another thing I'm going to do to get in these body lines, I will take this block and kind of knock the orange peel off of that. And then I'm going to take, you guys have seen me use the sanding sponges before. We'll use that to finish it off. Those sanding sponges are really a helper, time saver, especially when you're doing contoured areas. But you really need to get it blocked straight first. If it's an area where it's got to be flat. If it's already on a contour and it's a small enough spot, those sponges will get you by for sure. I've sanded bumper covers with them before where I did some repairs on corners and stuff. And I still use the guide coat with something like that just to make double sure that that that's feathered in the way it's supposed to be. You're going to see this isn't going to take me very long because I've already got the scratches refined pretty good. This hood has never been repainted before. The only thing that's ever been repaired on this truck was the passenger cab corner up toward the top. I actually was pulling out of this building, and we used to have the Nextel phones, and anybody who ever owned a Nextel phone knows that they interfere with a lot of things, and even though they're not supposed to. My Nextel phone, if it would ring or if somebody would call me on the two-way, would activate my garage door. Not every time, but every once in a while it would, and this truck was sitting in the way, and my phone rang, and that garage door started coming down, and it caught the back of the cab and put a big gouge in it. So that had to be repaired, which I didn't do it right to begin with. I definitely wasn't as knowledgeable, and my skill set definitely wasn't as good as it is now. When I repaired it, I tried to blend it clear and leave the emblem on the panel, and I just didn't do it right, and it never blended in right. The color matched fine, but over a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, being in the, the north where we don't get as hot a sun, the clear coat melt lasted a little bit longer than average, but it started to fail. So when we repainted that, we made sure to feather that all out, and let me tell you, it wasn't bonded all that good. I apologize for sniffling my nose. My sinuses are always kind of on the go, so I'll apologize up front for that. You guys are probably used to it by now, but I have terrible sinuses. The other reason I'm taking the 600 to get this flat and finish it off is to catch any primer overspray that got on the red and make sure that that's sanded off. Not that it's really going to interfere with my color, but the smaller these areas are, the better chance you have of hiding with less coats of paint. They also make an even softer block than this one. It's almost open cell foam, and those work good for contours too. But dump that in the bucket. It's got a piece of trash on it. Here's the Norton sanding sponge. We're going to use that here in a second, and I'll show you how. Even though you guys who watch me most of the time already have seen me use that, but I'm not trying to promote any particular product. I don't care which brand you buy, but those are the one that my jobber carries. They carry the 3M ones too, but they don't list on the back of them what grit they are. And if you use them every day, fine, extra fine, medium, you know what those will do. And I don't, so for me to grab one of those and try and remember it, what I'm actually sanding with, sometimes can be difficult. But I'm going to let you guys watch this until I'm done with it, and we'll wipe it down, and you're going to see the finished product. I think with that second prime that we're ready to rock. This will not require any additional work other than I'm going to put some sealer on it. And it's not a sandable type sealer. You can sand it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some sealer on it. If I'm not too busy tomorrow, I'll remask this and make sure my edges are scuffed, or at least pull my tape far enough away that I can scuff those edges and clean this real nice. And after I do that, course, we'll get it cleaned up good, and we'll put some sealer on it and let that set. And I'll go over it one last time to make sure this primer didn't shrink up a bunch on me, because I think that may be what happened. I don't remember if I used this or if I used that Montana high build primer, and I have had issues with the Montana stuff before because it's made to be used in a pretty warm shop, as all of it is, but you can always put some accelerator in it, like universal accelerator. And that'll help it through dry, but if it, it might be dry to the touch, and it might sand okay, but if it's not done curing, or if it doesn't cure all the way through like it's supposed to, you will either get sand scratches that swell up, because initially while that film build is wet, it'll bridge those sand scratches and flow right across them, but then as it cures up and shrinks, it'll shrink down into that scratch. And of course you'll have something that's what I would consider to be less than desirable. So we're about done with the hand block in here with this piece of 600. And everything's nice and fuzzy edge. We're going to take that foam pad, 500-600 grit is what it's rated at, and we're going to go. Make sure you guys are still in the frame here. We're going to go, we have a body line right there where that Durablock is. We're going to go in there, and we're going to make sure that that's feather edged in the way it's supposed to be, and that there's not a bunch of orange peel in it. Those areas can be a pain. And I honestly don't need to really have any primer all the way over here, so I'm going to sand on this just a little bit, because my repair is back. Here there was a chip, and up here there was, so I'll feather that back quite a bit. It's pretty thin because most of it's just, I don't want to say overspray, but I got a little carried away. But these things are absolutely dynamite for getting into those contours. And it'll keep you from putting fingerprints and stuff, and you can ride your hand right over that bad boy. There's a company out there called Eagle Abrasives, and I saw it on the SEMA channel, and then I don't know if any of you guys watch Solder Jet Johnny. The channel is called Team Amerigo, or Amerigo, or America Go, all one word. Yeah, it's Team America Go. That's Solder Jet Johnny's channel. He is, I think he's a painter up in New York, and you want to see somebody who can rock out some paint jobs. He's got this product he's using that's a super high solids, one coat clear. Supposed to have the same kind of film build as 2 coats of regular high solids, or probably 3 coats of medium solids, something like that. But anyway, getting back to the story, check him out. Team America Go, Solder Jet Johnny. He showed on one of his videos, I'd seen him before, but he'd only made a couple of videos, and all of a sudden he started making a bunch of videos, and I heard somebody else talk about him, and I thought, I don't think I subscribed to him at the time. I was trying to get some tips on spraying clear coat a couple years ago. He had made some vids, and his vids are really short, so they're not really truly instructional, like a step-by-step sort of deal. But if you just want to watch a guy do some cool stuff, he is a master at laying clear for sure. He showed these sanding pads, and it's a film type pad, that's equivalent, and they make different grits, but it's a microfine sanding pad, and it's equivalent to the one he used was like 1,000 to 1,500 grit, and he was using them in the paint booth. He was doing a blend on a gate of like a Trailblazer or something, and he got some trash in it, and basically the backer pad is a foam pad like this that's it's either hook and loop or a stick it type, and then he put this pad on it that was a sanding film, and you can nib the trash out of your base coat, or probably sealer too for that matter, but probably more toward base coat or primer or something like that, just to pick up the trash. And the great thing about it was it doesn't pick up any dust, or it doesn't make any dust. All of it sticks to the pad. Then you go over, and being in like a downdraft booth, if you take a blowgun and blow that dust off, it's going to get sucked right down into the filter of the booth. So he showed those, and I thought that was pretty darn slick. I'd never seen any product like that before. And then I noticed, I did a search on them, and there's some videos on the SEMA channel that show that product. And that company is supposed to be one of the leaders in micro sanding technology. At least SEMA made it out to be that way. And they're usually showing cutting edge type stuff, as well as like the NACE show and stuff like that, from what I've seen on the tube, So go check out Solder Jet Johnny. He's just pretty cool to watch, man. He's a laid back guy, and he just goes in the booth and he'll do the side of a car, and the minutes are like a minute and a half. Videos are a minute and a half or 2 minutes long. And he does it with his iPhone, and he just bangs out car after car after car after car, which I don't know if it's his shop or not, but I mean, this guy is a rock star shooting clear. He really he impressed me. Let's put it that way. Let's not put him up on a pedestal. Let's just say he impressed the living hell out of me. And another guy, and I can't remember his name. I know Turbo Cobra is subscribed to him, but the guy's name is 10. He talks about the wet clear coat, and I heard a few guys talk about it, and I forget what I was looking to watch some vids of people shooting clear with a Niwata, like the one I've got here, and just wanted to see their technique and how they were doing it and all that. And I came across this cat named 10, and he sprays this clear coat. I think it's Autobahn clear coat, but I think they've got it labeled to sell for his shop or something like that. And it's an ultra high solids, and it's supposed to be, this super duper high solids. You're going to have the wettest looking paint job ever, clear coat, which I've used the Autobahn stuff before if it truly is Autobahn, and I'm not impressed with it. I used their spray and bed liner stuff before, which is kind of like the Raptor liner, and I was not impressed with it at all. Could have been technique or preparation on my part, but he sprayed this guy 10. He does a lot of custom stuff at his shop. I can't remember exactly where he's located at, but he's another dude to go check out. Allcandy.com is the name of his website, and he sells products on there and promotes different things, but he's actually really cool to watch. He's just real laid back, kind of guy. Cool to watch. So that's pretty much that. We're done. I don't see any more guide coat. Just kind of going through these body lines one last little time here. I see a few areas where I broke through, and I'm seeing sealer on the hood. So that's alright. We're going to put some 2K sealer down on this sucker and get it all sealed up. Because if you can see sealer peeking through, or even you can see that you've seen it through your clear coat, get some sealer on it. you won't be sorry that you did, but if you don't, you will be. Because when you go to throw the base down, it will curdle up like somebody threw gasoline on it. It'll pick that edge up because base coat is sensitive to solvent. So anytime you have a sand through and get down to past your clear, anytime you break through the clear, seal it up. Sometimes you can get lucky and it doesn't cause you a problem, or you can let it settle down for about half an hour, depending on your temperature, and put some more base over it, and it'll lay back down. But you never want to have a surprise like that if you can avoid it. So I figured I'd throw my 2 cents out on that. The other thing that'll get you, even if you haven't sanded through completely, and you're going to put your base down, and that car's been painted 3 or 4 times, like a bumper's been repaired several times because it's been dinged a lot. If you have excessive film build on there, I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of times that'll pick that edge up where you sanded it through. And then you'll be like, oh man, what do I do now, And there's ways around it. That's what either you let it sit and relax and don't put your base coat on so wet until it's hidden, and then start doing your blend and all that. But we're going to give you a shot here how this goes. The other thing is put some waterborne primer over it and let it dry and sand it out and start basing again. That'll usually hold it down. But we're at 20 minutes here, so we're going to cut this out. That's what you want. I have a sand through there. I know I'm broken through the clear because I'm into the base coat. I guarantee that'll be dull, and we know that that's base. So I'm going to have to make sure I seal, either spot seal this or seal the whole hood. The smart thing to do would probably be to seal the whole hood. I haven't made that decision yet. Excuse me. Goodness. But you can see here where I right up that body line. The paint's usually thinner there. I broke through the sealer. I have 2 or 3 little spots like that. Most of them on edges, of course, except one right here where I got through my 2K primer, and that's actually etch underneath there. So we're going to want to make sure that I seal that up nice and tight. And I will let that sealer cure. And the reason I'm going to sand it is to nib any trash out of it, because this is the hood, and my shop is not that clean. So the more trash I can keep out of it, in the undercoats, the better off you are. Because when you get to your top coats, if you start sanding one of those nibs, and it's those nibs of dirt will stick out, and the paint won't really build up over them. And when you sand them out, it will actually, if you've got a dirt nib in the sealer, you'll sand it and you'll have a white spot, or a gray spot, so to speak, where that happened. So that's why I'm going to do it that way. So at any rate, guys, that's where I'm at. I'm going to bring the Super Duty in, and we're going to get an oil change done on that. So enjoy this and the previous clip, and leave a comment if you like, and we'll catch you on the next one.